Day one. Welcome to day one of the free 7-day self-love challenge. In this video, we're focusing on self-care, the power of hugs, and breath. Get ready to dive deep. There might be emotions, there might be releases, there will be homework, and you might be a different person by the end. We will have an offer for you on day 4. That offer closes on day 7 so we can get ready for the next round. Go through the challenge as many times as you want for free. When you're ready, take the offer and go deeper. Now, let's get into it. Welcome everybody to day 1.
For self-love. Our heater is off and we were like,
That's why we're all bundled up if you haven't noticed.
That's why we blanket on. So today is the first day of the self-love deep dive. We're going to talk about the basic foundation today. For those of you guys that kind of are just getting to know us, I'm Heather.
And I'm David.
From Zenrose Garden.
Yes. Helping people create
badass lives. I love how he does that.
I do, because I do.
I thought about this challenge a lot yesterday. And I thought about it quite a bit. I was like, how can we bring self-love in a different way and just kind of, do it in a different angle, you know? And because everything's been said about self-love. And we talk about self-love as the foundation for a happy life all the time. But how can we strip it away even more? So I thought about this really deeply. And I thought, what's the foundation? What's the real foundation? And we talk about self-love, self-acceptance, forgiving yourself, and all of that, which we're going to get into. We're going to get into all those really deep topics. But I want to talk about 3 really basic things that you might not consider self-love that I think are super important.
And I do want to clarify self-love versus self-care before we get too deep into this. And we're going to be using the terms interchangeably, but realizing that self-care is an act of showing yourself love.
Yes. And if you can't show yourself acts of self-care, it's very difficult to self-love.
Yes.
So we're going to start with 3 basics. But I want to ask you a question for you to put in the comments for me, because I love to do it. I love to hear what you have to say. Name the last 3 people that you hugged.
I'm like going, oh, but I have a person here. I can actually show you.
So name the last 3 people that you physically hugged. And when? Was it within the last 24 hours?
And we're doing this intentionally to kind of spark that off and give you a conscious awareness of how much self-love you express in the world around you and how much self-love you receive from the world around you.
Right. So I want to, like I said, throw a monkey wrench and look at this a little bit differently. And were those 3 hugs in the last 24 hours?
Right.
Okay, so the last 3 people, and were they in the last 24 hours? We're talking about foundations here. And right now we're ripping our bathroom out and remodeling it because it's got 1970s foundation in there. It's got 1980s. In the 80s, somebody redid the bathroom. And it's clear that it's the 80s. I used to be a designer. Because it's like 80s tile, 80s fixtures, and 70s pipes and foundation. So we had this leaky, watery stuff, water coming out from under the wall from the kids' bathroom, which is right on the other side. And I was like, enough is enough. Before this house gets mildewy, I'm ripping it out. So I ripped it out past the nice 80s remodel they did down to the foundation and the pipes. I'm like, no one fixed the pipe or fixed the shower pan. You know, there was no good foundation underneath this nice tile bathroom that they put over all of this stuff. And I'm like, that's like what we need to do. We need to really look down what's beneath the massages and the self-care and the workouts and the making sure you have time off. What's beneath all of that?
And where is your self-care and your self-love rusty? Because if you're just piling, happiness on top of that, it's still built on a foundation that may need pipes upgraded.
So these are 3 simple things that I bet you haven't thought of. So the process of today, we're going to talk about the roadblocks and some of the solutions. Like I said, today's about 3 basic things that I'm going to want you to do in the next 24 hours. And then we'll get deeper and deeper as the week goes on. And then David's going to throw us a meditation that I think is really profound. As we were talking about it, I was like, this is going to kick ass.
Yeah.
So let's talk about hugs for a second, okay? I think a hug is one of the simplest forms of self-love, because when we hug someone, we stimulate endorphins, which make us happy, make us feel good, and make us feel that human connection, because love is about human connection, and we love other people to kind of self-love ourselves. And so we talk about doing this in an unhealthy way in our work a lot by seeking that external love, but I want to talk about it in a healthy way. When we hug someone, it's an act of self-love for ourselves, right? Because it makes us feel good. You know, it's like I got my blanket on, so I'm like kind of hugging myself with my blanket. When we curl up in our blanket, we're sort of hugging ourselves. So don't overlook that simple act of self-love as something that's very vital and important. And psychologists did a study I read years ago, Psychology Today, that the 5-hug theory, right? I gave you 3 because I figured, I don't know if you can find 5 people just like that, but the 5 hugs a day is really good for our mental health and our emotional health, and to keep that endorphin level running through our bodies. It makes us feel good and gets us a little bit high, right?
And it's also really good for physical health. And this is something that, and Nancy, I'm so glad that you brought up the dog. She says my dog every day. So I'm glad that you brought up the dog, because when we're talking about physical care, even, elderly people will have dogs that they bring in, or they'll have animals that they bring in so that they can cuddle and snuggle and feel that self-love, because it does help a lot to your physical care as well.
Right, and hugging an animal and petting an animal boosts your immune system. They've proven it. I don't want to underestimate the power of the hug.
Right.
It's a simple thing, but I wanted to talk about these 3 foundational things.
And for those of you who may be lacking in the physical contact, or at least kind of having longer periods of time between physical contact, it may be a mental shift initially to open up more and to engage in physical contact more frequently. Okay, even if it's just touching somebody, that opens you up mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally to receiving more self-love for yourself.
Self-love for yourself.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Neiman also said, Nima also says, meditation is virtual hugs. That's very true.
So
I'm on board.
I'm on board, and I'm so glad that you said that, because I was debating whether or not to include meditation as like one of these 3, and I decided not to, because this whole thing is about meditation. We always do a meditation, so and it's not the simple basic, right? It's something that we work on doing as self-care. But I want everybody right now to take a moment and hug yourself, because I'm glad you said that, Nima, that you've hugged yourself. Have you ever really, really hugged yourself? Like really, really touched yourself and like squeezed your arms like you would hug someone else? Not like this kind of like hugging, scary kind of hug, like, rocking back and forth. That's kind of not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about really, really hug yourself. So take a moment, wrap your arms around yourself.
I just did it.
And hug yourself.
I guess I'll do it again.
Nima says, I took so long to accept hugs from others. And some people do, right? They have a hard time being touched, a hard time accepting hugs. And that's kind of very telling about, are you willing to allow that to come in? Do you feel safe enough and vulnerable enough to fully hug someone? Now, have you ever met anyone that hugged someone like this, like the prom queen hug?
Oh.
I've been hugged by people like that, and it feels
awkward.
It feels awkward. Like for me, I like a full body hug. Some people are like, oh no, like private parts might be touching, but you're not thrusting your hips into somebody. But just like a nice big body hug just feels so good.
And Nima, bringing that up, taking a long time to accept hugs from others and to receive hugs. This can happen often if we've ever had any traumatic experience, especially any kind of a physically traumatic experience. We may be protecting ourselves from that kind of pain again. So it's going to take a conscious opening of allowing yourself that freedom and proving to yourself that you are safe. Okay. For me, I've had abuses when I was a child, and that's kind of prevented me as I was growing up from receiving those kinds of open, expressive hugs or embraces or contact, physical contact. And it's not a big thing. It's still something that I constantly have to mentally align myself to. But it's something that still takes place on subtle levels. And when we're talking about improving ourselves, when we're talking about getting better, opening up to receiving, it does take conscious effort. Okay, opening up to any new pattern does take conscious effort, but the rewards are well worth it. Matter of fact, for me personally, this last year has been about intentionally deepening my connections with others, which includes more physical contact.
So this is a thing. Like some people are more touchy-feely and more huggy, and some people don't like to be touched as often. And some people go in cycles where they like to be touched, they like physical contact, and then just don't want to be touched. And those sometimes can be normal cycles.
Right.
If I just want some alone time, I don't want to have physical contact, and that's okay. Sometimes we're overstimulated. But if you are constantly having sort of a repulsion for hugging people, unless they have some sort of a thing, but I'm talking about people that you want to hug. Look at your own reactions. Why am I reacting in a negative way because there's something going on with that person, or does that person really need a hug? So giving hugs in the way you respond, as simple as it is, can be very telling about things that you want to work on. Like I said, it's something simple that can get deep.
Right. So Aaron says, that felt better than I expected. I never really hug myself often. Wow. Yes, again, this is something that we don't normally do. We don't normally give ourselves an intentional hug and give ourselves that kind of self-love and experience that self-love. Nancy says, hugging myself makes me go into my heart center, pure love. Nima says, genuine hugs. Chelsea says, I don't like hugging toxic people.
That's okay.
Absolutely. And Aaron says, I won't hug them. F that noise. My parents are coming over today. I guess I can practice toxic people.
I can practice hugging toxic people.
Yeah.
You know, hugging toxic people is one of those things where you've got to, if you're detached from it and you're just like, I'm going to hug you because you're toxic and you need a hug without like,
oh no, it's going to get on me.
Right. Then I think you're safe to hug a toxic person. It just depends on your attachment
but that also,
to them.
Yeah, that also speaks volumes to where you're at in your healing process. Have you achieved that state where you're neutral enough, where you've worked on your triggers enough to the point where hugging that toxic person is not going to trigger you. It's not going to send you into some fear mode.
Well, hugging a toxic person, if done from the right space, can be an act of compassion that really fills you. Or if you're feeling really weak and just working on your own stuff right now, don't feel great, then I wouldn't recommend doing that.
Yeah.
But
the other element to that is you don't want to give somebody a hug who is not open to receiving a hug.
Right. Awareness.
Yeah.
So, but really this is about, not so much about let's go hug people, but hugging for you is what this is about. It's like, hug yourself. I know it, and I love that you guys hugged yourselves and were like, wow, I wasn't expecting that to be so intimate, but it really is. I think often we don't touch ourselves, and I don't mean that in like a masturbation kind of way, but I mean, you know, I think often we don't touch ourselves enough and really feel and appreciate our bodies and be like, thank you. Thank you for like taking me through this life. Thank you for being my vehicle. Can we do that? That's the simplest act of love for ourselves. Hug yourself. Thank yourself. Your body is so important to you. And we have a lot of body shaming, and we're going to get into those later. But like I said, those are deeper things that can get very complex with a lot of psychological shit underneath them. But can we just hug ourselves, touch ourselves, and go, hey, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You know?
Right. And Chelsea says, I feel like my safe hugs come across as, hey, bro, kind of hug. Absolutely. And that's a great place to hug. Aaron says, I just don't want to hug a person who's being a total dick.
And that's
nobody wants to hug a dick.
You know, and that's a let's talk about that later. And that's also an act of self-love, is not forcing yourself to hug someone that they really need a hug because
because they need a hug.
Overextending too. This is about self-love.
Yes.
So hug yourself. Make the practice today of like pausing at least 3 times and hugging yourself. Tira says, I have not wanted to be touched by anyone all year. It's been sad, definitely hug starved. I precogged this topic last night and I was hugging myself. Of course you did, Tira.
Yep. Yep.
We've known Tira for, I don't know, close to 10 years now, maybe. I don't know, but she's been in a lot of our classes, just for those of you that are on here, and always precogs like the next slide that's coming.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
So next we're going to get into another part of self-love and self-care, which is sleep.
So honestly, this is another thing that I don't think we think about as self-care, because we're like, go to the gym, make sure you meet your goals, make sure you do this and that and the other thing. But what about the basic foundation of sleep?
Right. And here's the thing with these kinds of self-care tactics and self-love tactics is a lot of times we get into the doing mode of self-care, the doing mode of self-loving. But when do we actually give ourselves the freedom to let go and step back and just kind of allow more? Okay, because we're in a force mode of self-love and self-care because we've got to be doing something. And that's what our conscious mind is programmed, is to do instead of just be.
So sometimes we self-love, self-care activity ourselves to death. But sleep is one of those simple things that I'll just need a nap. I just need to let go. And I'm not even talking about naps. I'm talking about your 8 hours of sleep a night. So often, and more often than you would expect, we help people through sleep difficulties. In fact, just recently. And what we find is it can be very complex topics underneath why you aren't sleeping. Sometimes it's chemical. Sometimes you've gotten yourself off of this rhythm and you don't know if it's night or day. But I think one of the biggest things underneath it is a low grade state of fight or flight.
Right.
So we go through these 90-minute sleep cycles every night, about 5 to 6 of them, which equals about, roughly 7.5 hours of sleep. And between each 90-minute sleep cycle, we sort of rise to the top, right? And if we are in some sort of low-grade state of fight or flight, it's really easy to pop awake.
Right.
And once we pop awake, we've popped awake with a little bit of adrenaline because we're in a low-grade state of fight or flight, which means a low-grade stress. Stress is low-grade fight or flight.
Right. So if anything in your life is stressing you, it's probably because some part of your brain is afraid of something or is protecting you from some perceived threat.
So it's very easy, if you haven't learned to deeply relax, to wake up in those 90-minute cycles. Like a lot of people, I wake up every night at 3:33. And that might be when your 90-minute cycle of the night of that cycle is ending and your consciousness is coming to the top.
And it pops through because you're still in that fight or flight state.
If you're deeply relaxed, you just go down under and start another cycle and do your dream cycle and come back up.
Goes to Australia every 90 minutes.
So
goes down under. Anyway.
So sleep is really important. I mean, like I said, we can't get real complex into the topic of why you might not be getting a deep 8 hours of sleep, but we do very conscientious things in our world to completely unplug.
Yes.
We don't really, once in a while we watch TV in our room, but most of the time we do not. We've got salt lamps in our room. We've got a white noise ocean generator. We've got a bed that we sleep on with crystals underneath it. We do everything we can to make sure that sleep is deep and undisturbed.
And when we're talking about sleep, when we're talking about setting yourself up for good sleep, by doing this, what you're doing is you're mentally preparing yourself to create a pattern of relaxation, a pattern of going into this state of sleep. So when Heather's talking about we've got our room set up to sleep, that's pretty much what we do in our room. So when we start going into our room, we know consciously, subconsciously, all the way around, okay, it's time to wind down, it's time to go to sleep, you're going to rest.
So we're not rested in the daytime. We're kind of frantic and...
we're not frantic, we're just doing
frantic. We're tired. We're not completely present for ourselves or others, and it's hard to do those deeper practices of self-love if that's not it.
Yeah, if you're not getting enough rest.
I want to talk to Nancy real quick because I feel the last few months like I'm turning into a gecko, and that's what menopause is about.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? It's like you wake up in the night. I have to have socks. I have my socks on right now. And I sleep in these because my feet get cold and I wake up. But when you have hot flashes, because the last few months they've intensified and they do wake you up. It's like you're cold and then you're hot and you throw the blankets off and then you're cold and sweaty. So then you start freezing. So
And that's hot flashes, what everybody gets to look forward to.
those of you women that are under 40,
Right.
this is what you have to look forward to.
And those of you men that also have women that hot flash.
Right. So, David, I swear to God, menopause is about transforming into a gecko. I'm pretty sure that after this is over, I'm going to have gecko superpowers because it's like in the night. But just for me, I made a few switches so that I can sleep more deeply, and it's totally helped is to take some black cohosh closer to bed. So I take black cohosh a few times a day. I put some in my coffee, and I take some closer to night. So Nancy, just making that switch and making sure that I have that is totally like I'm sleeping much better. So anyway, I didn't really like menopause tips in the middle of this, but that has helped me sleep better. Taking melatonin. So anyway, there's a lot of different things that you can do to sleep deeper, but just that is like the number 2 thing we want to talk about. That's simple.
And Ashley says, I wake up every morning between 2 and 4, and I'm always up for a couple of hours. And again, that might be some of that fight or flight kicking in and popping you out of that state of sleep in between that cycle, in between that 90-minute cycle, or at the end of that 90-minute cycle, in between your next cycle. Mima says, I like a dark room to sleep inside and silence. Absolutely. Nancy says, I have to change PJs. Yeah, black cohosh is great for regulating that kind of an element. Spoiler alert, we are reptilians.
Yeah, we got this
Thanks,
little we're all reptilian for you conspiracy theorists. We've got this little reptilian brain back here, and guess what? We all have it. Wine helps. Yes, Nancy. Sometimes a glass of wine before bed. But yeah, I feel it. Feeling really good right now.
Right. So. Next, we're going to get into the another very important tip, and these are all like things that you don't really think about consciously often, and when you do, it's a game changer. This one is breath. Every breath can be an act of self-love and self-care. Okay? But most of the time we just go about breathing. It's an autonomous action. The same thing with sleeping. The same thing with the first one, whatever that one was. Hugs. These are kind of autonomous actions that we just do whenever they come up or whenever we think about them or whenever we, waste ourselves out and get so tired we have to sleep. But when you consciously do these acts, conscious physical contact, conscious breath, conscious sleep, you give yourself permission to care for yourself enough to start loving yourself.
So ritual sleeping practices. I mean, it sounds kind of ridiculous, but we really do have a ritual that we create every night when we go to sleep. And
everybody does.
Yeah. So it intentionally, consciously think about those every time you do them. And there's a wonderful Native American saying that I love, that every step on the earth is a prayer. And it brings you into that feeling of like every moment on this earth is something to be grateful for, good or bad. Every step on the earth is a prayer to the Great Spirit. Let's intentionally live, even down to our breathing. Because what happens if we don't breathe? We die.
Right.
We're not here. That's the thing that we can live the least without, right?
So these shifts create a shift in your love and your self-care and how good you feel about your life. So make these minor shifts to create a major impact on how you feel about yourself.
So I did a meditation a while ago, which David's going to probably incorporate a little bit into his meditation, about when you breathe in. One of my yoga instructors would always tell me breathing through the nose is so important because it relaxes the body immediately. Breathing through the mouth is for emergencies, she said. But if you breathe through the nose, it automatically calms your whole body down.
Yeah, and this is, talk about subconscious programming. The nose breathing is, you're safe. The mouth breathing is, oh shit. Okay, so when you do a lot of mouth breathing, you're pretty much already in a state of fight or flight. If you do more nose breathing, you calm down into a state of relaxation.
So we're going to get into more emotional stuff as the days go on, but I wanted to get into this physical stuff that I want you to be conscious of the next 24 hours that is kind of more foundational, even down to the breath, which is the ultimate act of self-love, to just keep breathing.
Right.
But I want you to do a little exercise with me right now before David gets into his mojo. And that is to close your mouth and take a really deep breath through the nose and fill your lungs. And continue doing that. And I'm going to talk you through this. So continue breathing deeply and slow through your nose and fill your lungs. I want you to notice as that breath comes in, where there is resistance in your lungs, in your shoulders. Do your shoulders go up when you breathe? Do your lungs go out? Or are they just going out in the front? And remember that you've got lungs in the back, right? So your rib cage is like this. It's not like flat on one side. So think about your whole rib cage expanding, the sides, the back, everything. Does it just feel like it's expanding in the front? Are your ribs going out on the side? Are they going out in the back? So a full deep breath should expand your whole rib cage in a barrel, and then go all the way down to your root. So just spend a moment just breathing in and filling your whole body up, your lungs, your rib cage, your root, and then breathing it out.
And this is also very telling subconsciously of where you're holding stress and tension in your physical body.
And this is so simple to figure out where your blocks are. And then you can start talking to those blocks. And then you can start getting more complex. Shoulder, what are you holding? What is this fear you're holding? All of that. But if we can just start with the breath, we're starting at the foundation of life for who we are. The foundation of self-love.
Right.
The first act of self-love is breathing.
Yes.
You can quote me on that.
Right. And when it comes to breathing, any given moment, we can give ourselves 30 seconds of breathing to bring ourselves back into right here and now, and to calm down that fight or flight, and to give ourselves a moment of self-care, a moment of self-love. All it takes is 30 seconds. One breath, one single breath. If you do 5, it's even better, but one single breath at any given moment can reset your fight or flight.
And this is why we talked about these 3 things on day 1, because when people, and not meditation, because meditation, when people are like, don't have time to meditate, I can't meditate, it's so difficult. I'm like, if you are breathing, you have the opportunity to meditate at any moment. Stop, breathe, focus on the breath for you've got to breathe. You might as well multitask, right? So breathing is the first act of self-love.
Yeah. And you can go for as short of a time as you need or want or believe you have time for. Okay? And you build on it. Okay? So if you're spending 5 breaths in the morning before you wake up and just breathing your self-love, breathing your self-care, breathing life into you in the morning when you get up, before you get up, same thing before you go to sleep, just take 5 breaths and consciously love yourself.
So when I go to sleep at night, this is a practice that I do because my brain is very active and it's going all the time and there's ideas coming in and out. So when I lay down to go to sleep, from the time I was a kid, I had to be exhausted to go to sleep because I'm always thinking of things. So now when I go to sleep pretty early, try to get to bed around 8 or 9. We like to be asleep. We get up around 5. I like to take deep breaths and let those breaths carry me into my sleep. That way I'm doing, 2 things at once, right? I'm breathing and coming into a deep, relaxed sleep. So breathing deeply, like I just showed you with the rib cage, I do very intentionally before I go to sleep.
And here's the thing. Aaron says, why the F am I always stressed? This realization is upsetting. Keep in mind that everything that you have been doing throughout your entire life has been the result of you programming yourself. So if you've been in these periods of stress, anxiety, fight or flight for a long period of time, you have to reprogram it. Okay? You've spent 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 years, whatever it is, programming yourself for stress or relaxation.
So you start really simply with the breath, which is the first act of self-love. And I want you to start thinking of it as the first act of self-love. Notice where those places of stress are in your body on the daily. Stop you're stopped at the stoplight. You can do this.
Right. And this doesn't mean that if you relax, you're not going to be productive. Okay, that's a common misconception when it comes to relaxation. If I relax, I won't be able to do things. I have to do so many things, I don't have time for relaxation. The thing with that is the more relaxed you are, the more efficient you become. So if you give yourself the freedom to honor the relaxation phase when it's time to do things, you do more in less time. Okay? Because you're not wasting your resources and energy on maintaining this state of doing. You're giving yourself the resets in between to allow that efficiency to flow at your most optimum levels.
When I first came across this wonderful breath meditation years ago, the lady who wrote it talked about, I wish I could claim this as my own, but I can't, is she was like, think about when you take that breath through your nose and let that breath run through your body, that you're internally caressing yourself. So I started out saying, let's hug yourself, touch yourself, feel what that caress feels like on you, on your body. But the lady who taught the meditation said, breathe as if you are caressing yourself from the inside.
And I personally, I like the word embrace when it comes to that, just because that's more beneficial for me. It resonates more deeply into the self-care elements.
I like the inner caress with the breath, but whatever is good for you.
Right. And another element to this is just imagining the elements of your biggest idols giving you a hug, embracing you, caressing that part of you that really, really needs that physical contact. That love, whether it's Jesus, Buddha, your mother, your best friend,
your grandma that passed away,
right, your lover, whatever it is, experience that feeling of these important people in your life showing you love.
So I want you to think about, as David's prepping for his meditation, because we're going to get into it in just a second. Think about who in your life that you haven't seen, maybe someone that's passed away that you would love to have one more hug with. Think about someone that you idolize, like David said, like Mother Teresa or Jesus or Buddha or God, someone that was like, or the hugging saint, right? There's that hugging saint in India, that you would love to experience a hug from that person. We're going to start thinking about your breath, and we're going to get into this right now.
Don't forget, we have an offer for you on day 4 that closes on day 7. So grab it if you're ready, or do the challenge again. Now let's keep going.
So got a couple of assignments for you till tomorrow. I'm going to read some of these comments in a second. The first one is, I want you to give 5 meaningful hugs today. One of those can be to yourself. One of them could be to your pet. But as you give that hug, I want you to breathe deep with the hug. There's something that happens when you hug someone and then you breathe them in, and you breathe that cloud of love that connects you to yourself. So I want you to do that 5 times today, and then come back to the comments and let me know that you did it. But do #hugsdone or something like that. Also want you to say day 1 done, if you've done it, because we're tracking.
So for those of you who have completed the meditation, day 1 done.
Let's read some of these comments real quick before we sign off. Aaron says, had a moment with my own father just now. Choked up. Very nurturing moment here. He really loved me. LOL, I was just given a simple heart. Oh my God, the advice is to keep going. That's it. Good.
That's it.
Nancy says,
mother was Mother Mary and father was Joshua ben Joseph.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Beautiful. Really good, really good. So do that today. Like I said, we wanted to create a really solid foundation moving forward, because we are going to get into some deeper
concepts.
We're going to take a deeper dive tomorrow into self-love. So you guys enjoy your day. Breathe. Just keep breathing.
And we know that time is a precious and valuable commodity, and the fact that you have chosen to spend that with us and to spend that with yourself is absolutely appreciated. I'm going to get choked up here. Absolutely appreciated. And the greatest thing about that is when you're conscious of appreciating those who spend their resources with you, whether it's time, money, whatever it is, time being the most valuable, it allows you to appreciate yourself even more. So once again, thank you guys for bringing yourselves and sharing that with us.
All right, guys. Drop it in the comments, and we will see you guys tomorrow.
Enjoy. Don't forget, we have an offer for you on day 4 that closes on day 7. So grab it if you're ready, or do the challenge again.